Hello, and welcome back to Tales from Trollskull Tavern with Tricky, just Tricky today. I am going live to do a recap of the last two sessions. We missed one due to not being able to do it through the week, and so I'm going to try and remember the last 2 weeks of the game, being that the game was streamed a couple of weeks ago. Just trying out a new audio setup, just testing a few things so we can separate some of those game elements and make the actual product itself a little bit more robust, look and sound a little bit better, and be able to be edited and cleaned up. I am Tricky, so I'm bringing this broadcast to you today. If you're live on Twitch, you can see me breaking it down. I'll do some video and audio and stuff like that, and then I'll repost this up on YouTube on Saturday, so you can get a recap of the last two sessions before we go through another session 76 coming up. I am running some tabletop audio ambience, so shout out to tabletop audio. I'm gonna have to put a little art link. They've been really good for us as we've started to online stream. They have been providing us with the royalty-free music, so shout out to all the musicians and stuff that have given us the ability to kind of play our game and broadcast it without any issues of copyright, because previously, when you're offline, you don't have to worry about that sort of thing. You can just play whatever you want. And although I miss the Doom mixes during fights, it's still a great product, and it's still something that has really helped us to expand the online game that we're doing and bring it to the screen and stream it and in audio format. And hopefully the way I've got it set up at the moment, I'll be able to actually separate it so we're not just blasting people with audio and not really being able to move the levels of the players and me around in the future. This is just me for now, just a little test that I'm doing. So that is playing. Thank you to Tabletop Audio, Roll20, all of the usual suspects for helping us bring this game to an online format. There is not much else to say. Sorry we missed a week last week at short notice. We had some people that were a little busy, so we just thought we'll bring it offline. We will have to think about how we can continue to be online and continue to produce content while we are off, while we can't play the actual game. So over the next few weeks, I don't know, we'll probably maybe have a think about some one-shots or something like that, something to just keep the momentum going and keep the stream broadcasting, just so there isn't just they just weren't there that week. But hopefully, yeah, this recap today will be 74 and 75. Just bear with me, because yeah, I'm getting like a monitor mix of this, so I'm just gonna get used to that rolling forward. I don't usually, I monitor very low when I speak and when I do these things of my own voice, but at the moment I've got it up just a little bit higher because I want to try and get used to doing this sort of thing a little bit more, and then move out into more like voice acting and doing some voice plays and stuff for the content of the stream and the game itself. So yeah, bear with me with that, and let's get into session 74. So session 74 was a couple of weeks ago now. I'm just going to turn this down slightly in real time. You'll hear it go down slightly in real time. The session was on the back of some pretty heavy stuff. We played through some fights with Corin. Wrapping up the heist, obviously, we've talked about that. Bringing it all the way back to just some downtime and some roleplay. To then, we've added a new character into the mix as well, a new player character, which was Karim. And all of us were kind of anticipating when he was going to come into the into the game itself. And it's not always easy to bring a new character in, especially in these online situations where you can't see the person, you're not at a physical table. But we finally ended up at Trollskull Tavern. We were at Trollskull Tavern, then we finally ended up at the Yawning Portal, which is fitting where the entire campaign began. To see Karim rather, and meet him, that was a nice tribute, I thought, coming back to seeing that. I'm just going to put that on the screen because I do have that. I do have that up. So yeah, that's picture in picture now. It was great to sort of come back to this spot and then reintroduce a new character. It's always, when you're a player and there's a new character, you're always sort of thinking, oh, where are they going to come in? Like, you know they're going to come into the game. So as a player, you're always sort of sitting there circumspect, sort of like, oh, what's going to happen? But I thought it was a really good reveal. The original place that we had started the campaign was a good place to introduce another character, and that character was Karim. It was a very sort of guarded reveal. Like, when I was thinking, when I do the stream itself, like when I kind of manage the information and the art and the dissemination of what's happening, like I kind of knew a little bit about what he was bringing to the table because I've got to set up the art. But it was really cool that I have like the little box there. I'm just going to mute that, where he's in this little crate, ready to pop out. And it was funny that one of the players sort of mentioned, oh, that was cool, like I didn't know what was coming. And yeah, out popped Karim. He is an astral elf. No, sorry, he is an astral monk, not an astral elf. A half elf monk. And it was great pretty much straight away to sort of see. It's always good when you go, oh, a new person, like why are they wanting to join us? If you know anything about our backstory and us as a group, we are kind of very numb to the fact that pretty much everyone is trying to kill us in this game, unalive us in the game. And it's always difficult to bring somebody new along. Like, you're just basically saying to them, oh, you're basically gonna have to deal with us fighting a whole bunch of people, basically because they wanna take us down. There isn't any room to sort of say, oh, an adventurer, oh, who, like, what is your story? You want to join us, you want to be part of our group. Like there really isn't that much room for us to kind of do that at the moment, because we don't have a prestige element in our team or our adventuring group. We basically just have the group trudging around with this march of kind of doom hanging over their head the entire time. And it was a little clunky to introduce him, but basically it's great to have oh cool, like let's see what you can do. So instantly, there's a fight. And I always think in a D&D setting, you don't necessarily know a character or who a character is or what a character is playing. I personally don't go through and read who they are, what their abilities are. Like, I prefer to sort of meet somebody and go, oh cool, let's get into a fight scenario, see what they can do, and then we'll, oh wow, like you're a monk, you fight with your fists, like this is great, you can do this, and then you as a player sort of disseminate, oh well, a monk's obviously good with stealth, or like a rogue's good with stealth, or a paladin like is, oh, you're going to be a tank, like etc etc. Like, we've had that when we've had the three characters, Rykit, Corrin, and now Karim, and Ramadril as well previously. We'll hopefully have Ramadril back a little bit later this year. And it was good to just like, oh hey Karim, how you doing? Bang, fight. And it was I was sitting there sort of thinking, what is this fight going to be? Like, it's Trollskull Tavern. We previously fought there before. The basic intro to the game was a fight and a troll coming out of the portal to fight us, and the whole bar clearing out. So it was good to sort of, the same thing's happening again. Out of the tavern basically popped this old mind flayer that we have had some dealings with in the past when we were down in the in Undermountain. I can't remember exactly where that place was. Sturmcolder or something like that, maybe. There was basically a town that we had fought off some elves, some dark elves. It was one of those situations, I think, where there's a battle going on and you can clear out what's happening on one side and the other side moves in. You know, those video game type scenarios where you were allied with one side and then the other side moves in. And that other side happened to have this mind flayer. And I don't know, dealing in the past, like very, very early on, to go really right back into the annals, one of the first things as a group we kind of did is we went into the Xanathar hideout and we fought against some of their lackeys, but then also there was a mind flayer. And that mind flayer, we were like, I think level 1, maybe even level 2, like very early on. That mind flayer, instead of fighting us, kind of just went, okay, minions, take him down, and then went into a teleporter. And inside that teleport, like we could never get into the teleporter. I think there was a way to get in, but basically we were so low level that it was essentially a scenario where it's like, no, you won't be going into that teleporter. Essentially, that's certain death there. So I'm not 100% sure if that's the same mind flayer. There can't be too many different mind flayers, and I don't think we asked the question previously whether that's the same mind flayer. But I kind of remember, I'll have to go into the tapes, but I kind of remember we had a conversation with them and that we left, or maybe I'm mixing some of that stuff up. But essentially what had happened was we left that town, I think it was Stormcauldron, and we were moving on to the rest of the dungeon, and there was a couple of those rolled scenarios where like a fight happens basically. Like you roll, nothing happens. You roll, nothing happens. We rolled, and then there was a fight. And this fight contained the Mind Flayer and some of his other goons, which was a pivotal moment in the story, a big kind of moment in the story, because that was a huge fight. While I'm talking, I'll quickly try and see if I can bring up the fight itself, because I may have a version of it somewhere. But essentially that fight was huge for us. I think we were like level 8 at the time, and we really struggled to take him down. I think there might have been some other rock monsters, these rock monsters that were popping up. I can't remember what they were called. And ultimately, they took out one of our party members. Dead, not coming back style, passed. And Tricky as a character had always been like right front and center, right there where that character had passed. But that character had turned to black smoke. And he's always maintained that that's not, I didn't see a corpse there. I didn't see them bleed out. I didn't see the light leave their eyes. I don't think that character's dead. And in a D&D scenario, that player eventually like re-rolled a new character and all of that happened. But I still think it's really good that Tricky as a player in the game, as a character, maintains that player isn't gone. And I think a huge part of the rest of that players in the game eventually like leaving the game, there was still that thing hanging over the entire party's head. Like, you know, there's always the sorrow of that player leaving, the sorrow of that player passing. I think it was kind of propped up by the fact that I didn't see a death there. There wasn't a death. There was essentially black smoke, and that character disappeared. So, a little bit further in, it was great to see that we got a glimpse of, just scrolling through, some of those orbs, and then the Mind Flayer eventually leaves, and then we eventually get to see this character in a darkened form, because that, in the backstory, that character was a wizard. Tricky had a lot of kind of interactions with them, basically being a magic user and, you know, an arcane trickster. In his backstory, he's not necessarily a wizard who can cast spells using the rogue's arcane trickster ability. Essentially, he's somebody who just learns things, like sees the movements of a spell, the somatic components, asks what kind of components that you need, the spell components, And then eventually with repetition, he can learn those spells. So the way I've been playing that character all the way through is that he can't just pull spells out. He doesn't pull a spell out and just go, I now have invisibility. He has to see somebody doing it, go, oh, how did you do that? And then they show him how to do it, and he kind of goes, all right. And then he eventually learns that spell. So there was a lot of interactions between that character and Tricky, in that they were a magic user, and he knew that, oh, like if I stay with this magic user, I can kind of learn spells as I go along. We can share tips and tricks. Eventually I had sort of thought maybe I would take a couple of levels in Wizard. I don't know if I will, depending on how long this campaign goes. We're level 9 now. I don't know if I will sacrifice some of that higher end rogue stuff to take Wizard levels. I think what's the final? I think luck is the final rogue. Ability, the top of the tree ability, and yeah, stroke of luck, where if your attack misses a target within a range, you can turn the miss into a hit. Alternatively, if you fail an ability check, you can treat the d20 as a 20. Natural 20? That's pretty good. So obviously I'm not thinking about these things in a planning sense yet. I prefer to kind of be at the level that I am as a player and then move through what I'm picking up as I go along. And it also allows me to play that role play in the sense that I can pick up little things here and there, rather than say, this is my plan. At this level, I'm doing this. At next level, I'm doing that. I'm preparing this. I'm doing this. I prefer to kind of play their game as it comes along. But, everyone can play the way they want to play. So Timely turned into Dark Timely. Timely was the original wizard. And I, as a player, not in the game, had always thought, that character's not dead. That character's not dead. I'd always kind of spoken it out loud as the game had gone along. I didn't see him die, so I'm not gonna assume that person's dead. Like, he has to come back at some point. And in a way, offline, without discussing with the DM, I had always sort of thought, like, oh man, it'd be so cool if she brings him back in some sense. And obviously, me talking about that kind of planted the seeds in her mind that character, she should bring him back. And because he was a wizard whose backstory that wanted to turn into a lich, that's obviously a super heavy sort of backstory and carries some real weight. And one day we'll have to do a deep dive into his backstory and his lore to kind of set the tone of perhaps we're going to have like a few little encounters with this mini boss, essentially, in Dark Timely, who, obviously turning into a lich, there's some progression, there's some advancement, and as he's being turned into an NPC, the DM can kind of go on however she wants to go with it. The fight did occur. He did throw some pretty nasty stuff at us. I think there was a cone of cold in there. He was, as a player, I think an abjuration wizard from memory, and a lot of his gameplay was based around kind of transforming things, which was super interesting. There was a few scenarios where he had essentially turned people into giant apes, and really helpful stuff. And there was an interaction at one point with Mongi, the character. We've all seen Mongi as a character a fair bit, and he wanted to turn her into an ape. It was pretty funny, but at the same time, it was one of those moments of like, man, and like, no, just stop, no more apes. And essentially, Mongi, he was just like, come on, Mongi, one more time. Like he was some sort of, like drug dealer type person. Like he was chasing the high one last time, which was a pretty funny moment. But for him to sort of turn around and become a darkened character, there's more deathly wizard tricks like Cone of Colds. I think there was a mind control from memory in that session. I can't remember. It was a couple of weeks ago. We'll have to dig into the footage, but I think it would be cool as a group in general, or like whoever's left of the group that played with him, Ryket, myself, Theron, and the DM. Maybe we'll put together like a story progression of the original Wizard Timely, and then now this arc of Dark Timely, because I think throwing him as a mini boss, a little bit like this Mind Flayer, who is an NPC, at us, will kind of draw out those party elements and, you know, make for some cool roleplay and cool stories. And, you know, I think if he had have stayed in the group and tried to become a lich, there's consequences within the world. There's consequences within your party. I think I might have spoken about this before, in that creates new dynamics. Like that's I think maybe it's a trope of an idea for a wizard, but at the same time, to me, it's a pretty cool arc. Like I think it creates a lot of little plot points, a lot of little party points, and Tricky kind of as a character being the, you know, let him cook, let him do whatever he wants to do, you know. Also, I think gave him a little bit of confidence and credence to kind of continue on with that character, and I thought that was also a fun element of what was happening within the game. So he came out of the portal, like threw some pretty high level spells, some pretty good spells at us, and did a fair bit of damage. It was, you could see there Tricky's kind of like hiding behind the bar. It's tough for Tricky being the ranged character. He always wants to try and find somewhere to hide and shoot. And also I did drop my first magical ambush. I just reached level 9 and I can use now magical ambush. I did throw out a hold person hoping that it'd trap him, but I think my DC save is at 15 maybe or 16. It's not great. I think it's a wisdom save. Let me just quickly look up the spell of hold person. It is a wisdom 15 save, and I think my DC goes up a little bit very soon, but that's not really the point of this character. This character's more like a ranged damage dealer with some utility spells. It's not like an attack. I'm not going to use that spell DC as often. But I was hoping like you could drop that, because that would have been a really great point of using that magical ambush, making him roll that disadvantage save, and then being able to kind of interrogate and work through that in a role-playing sense. That would have been a really, really interesting way to kind of further that timely lore and that dark timely plot. Unfortunately, the DM was rolling insane. I think she rolled, I wrote here, I counted 6 or 7 natural 20s. It was just crazy, and I think she rolled at disadvantage a 16 and a natural 20. And that was like, I was just like, all right, well, that's just one of those things in you set up this little trap in D&D, and then the dice just says nope, which is always one of those things in D&D that you kind of just have to just go, all right, and it's always a bummer. Like you feel like, man, like I set all this up, why dice gods, why? But that kind of happened, and then we had Durnan basically step up and shoot timely with some sort of rifle weapon with a red gem in it, and Tricky as a character knows about these red gems because in his backstory his mother is descendant from red wizards, so it was a banishment version of that red stone, and he sort of revealed in the plot that there is a soul, like a soul gem kind of version, storing your souls in these things, which is some pretty dark stuff indeed. And that allowed us to kind of, you know, finish off that fight, finish off the little tether balls that were grappling us. Grappling is the worst. I just remember falling into, when we fought Fluffy, falling into the water and getting grappled by that tentacle. You just get a sense of like, I can't do anything. Like this sucks. Like I can't do anything. So it was like, I just remembered that feeling and was extrapolating it out to like Corrin and Karim. I don't think Theron did get grappled, but those two feeling the exact same way, and like, oh man, like it just makes you as a character think, damn, like, do I need to negate for this? Do I need to find something to get me out? Like, it's such a thing that happens not that regularly, but you still think, it like just makes you as a character wary that there's this one sort of element that really takes you out of a fight and makes you feel useless. And that's always tough. Like, it's always tough as a character to kind of grasp that sort of thing. So yeah, we took all of that out. We talked to Durnan. Durnan is a recurring character. I think he's one of the main NPCs in the original handbook for the Dragon Heist Waterdeep. So he's an actual proper character that we've had some dealings with. Throws Molotovs. I like that he throws Molotovs. And then he has, I think, the rifle, which might be a homebrew thing. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't looked at like his character page or anything. I do have the book. Maybe one day I'll have a look at it. And then, you know, we did get that little backstory for Tricky, which was an important part of, I think, his story. I don't think he's really revealed much about his mother. We've seen his father. We've talked about it. We've seen it in set pieces. But we haven't really explored the length and the depth of Tricky's backstory. I nearly said time. It's so close. The 3 T's, and now we've got the Orans and the Errands. So we had that little chat where I sort of revealed, like, yes, my mother is descendant of Red Wizards, and I haven't fully fleshed out that backstory yet. I think I will over the next few weeks as the arc of the story moves through that Corran arc and gets back to maybe Tricky's arc. I'll flesh out that story and think a little bit more on that backstory of why they are for my Red Wizards, because I think if you are in the game, in my opinion, if you are in the game as like allied with the Red Wizards, you're either moving towards the good side by moving away from that. This is just like my take on how I'm playing this character, or you're aligned with them and you've got some sort of like darkened evil in your past. I'm just not 100% sure how I want to play this yet. I think there's a few ways that it can go in the way it could play out, because there's some really deep connections in there. Like the Lich thing, there is some little points and deep connections that you can kind of play off. I've played off already that Timezone, which is Tricky's father, is very wary of magic. You know, he's I think what did we decide he was? A rogue of Mastermind. The head of the Hands of Shadow, we found out in that little backstory reveal with Corran and Genevieve. And he's like, the long and the short of it is basically I need to put in some of that backstory, just fill that up a little bit, because we basically talked about there being a Red Wizard. And I believe, like, with the DM, we've had conversations about soul stones, so you kind of know where that might be going with Tricky and his mother having passed. Is there a possibility that something like that bit might be coming later? So as a player, I love being in the dark about that, and when that kind of revealed, I was like wow, like that would be incredible. And it's something as a player you don't think of, like, just to talk about the game in general. As a player, you make your backstory, you have these little things that the DM throws in and leaves you going like, oh cool, I could rethink what I'm doing here. Like this is awesome. So that was a good little RP session that we had with Durnan. And also, when you come in and you really adhere yourself and endear yourself to the game, where these NPCs start to feel like they're real parts of what you're playing within the game. You know, it's very easy to have your NPCs just like, yes, I am quest giver 1, here is your quest, please go forth and do that quest. But it's also cool to endear yourself to like some of the main NPCs in the game and have them help you out and do things, and like where we help kind of arrest some of the things coming out of the yawning portal, we also essentially, you know, utilize them for help. He essentially transports us back down to the orphanage / homeless shelter. It's fine. It's a running joke that, is it an orphanage? Is it a homeless shelter? We don't know. A homeless shelter can be an orphanage, but an orphanage is not necessarily a homeless shelter. So following that, we were essentially teleported back down to, that's the fight. I'm just scrolling through it. That was when we were having a conversation. And yes, here we are back in the homeless shelter talking to NPC, I cannot remember her name, where she was talking about the teleporter being still open and some of the kids in the orphanage going in and out, which maybe we'll think about. We'll talk about that in a later context. So that was where 74 ended. Yep, 74 ended. And then let me get to 75. 75, dude. So 75 started without Corin. Essentially, it was a base point, a jumping off point of, hey, everyone, let's go after Corin's associate. That's the person. We're in dire need of this. We've basically sacrificed some downtime to move as quickly as possible back into the dungeon, get moving, and try and find this character, which is part of Corin's backstory. I think it's the most pressing need. It's one that the group has definitely needed to do to bring him into the fold of us. And also, there is a few little gaps and lulls in both Tricky Theron and Ryket's stories at the moment. Ryket, we did hear some stuff about Zakara. Maybe we might need to go and investigate some of that. But Corin, I think, most definitely has the most pressing need. Now that we have Kareem with us, we had a group of 4 of us. Ryket unfortunately missed the last 2 sessions because he's been busy dealing with some real life stuff. But he'll be back, I think, this week. And unfortunately, Corin slept in, so he missed the start of the session. So we, as a group, were eventually left going like, oh, do we go? He needs to be here for this. Like, we can't necessarily do that. In my mind, I was thinking he's probably going to turn up at some point, and then we'll kind of, fumble along, wander along, move the situation along, and we eventually found ourselves, I think, at the docks. We had some fun trying to work out Roll20's system. We are using an observer token. Essentially, in my brain, I'm trying to help the DM set this Roll20 up more as a staging tool rather than the tool that we use to move through the game. I think it's my opinion. Maybe she has a different opinion, but it's my opinion that the game itself being streamed now is going to work better as a stage tool rather than, watching us move around the map a lot. And we did, spoiler alert, later in the session, we did do a little bit of that, which, we'll have some talks about how we can kind of deliver that a little bit better. It's tough. There's an extra token, you got to move around. I was thinking maybe we have that token have a certain amount of light that shows the surroundings, rather than that token having just what's the light situation? I can't remember what the light situation is called. Dynamic lighting or whatever. Maybe we'll have that just show a certain amount, and then she can move that into areas where the people at home kind of watching can see. So we came to these docks and we had Brutus pop out. Brutus is another one we have to tell a large backstory about. We met him in our tavern. He was drinking and gambling, and he asked us to escort us into Undermountain. And I think it may have started out as somebody who was kind of, hey, I need you to go into the Undermountain, so now, let's go. I think it was a DM, maybe, I could be wrong, maybe it was a DM's way of getting us into Undermountain very early on in the piece. But now it's kind of turned into he just follows us everywhere, and he hasn't set a time limit on when or where he's going to finish up what he needs to do. But it's great that he's a Gloomstalker Ranger and that nobody can really see what he's doing. If he stands in darkness, nobody can really see him. And spoiler alert, it was revealed that Halistar tried to look for him, because I do believe at the time I kind of went, hey, where is that other guy that was following us, eh? And Halistar was like, don't know. And I was like, I'll bank that info, because that might come in handy a lot later. So he popped up, he gave us some information, essentially told us that the next kind of staging area for that prison slavery system for the Xanathar is on level 8, I believe. I didn't write it in the notes, but level 8. And it was, what was it called? I did write what it was called down here. the Dwemer core. Dwemer, obviously, when I hear the word Dwemer, I just think of Dwemer in Skyrim. I don't necessarily know if it's the exact same thing. Dwemer in 5e. A Dwemer in 5e. Yes, classical Dwemer from the Elder Scrolls. I have no idea if that's what that is. But assuming it is kind of like a dwarven underground civilization, that's essentially where we have to go, is the Dwemer core, to find Zarika, which is Corrin's accomplice. So in this situation, there was a little bit of a like, well, do we go after her? Like, he's not here. He's not here as a player. As a person, we kind of want him to explore his own backstory. It's kind of a cheap cop-out if we go through his backstory and kind of find out elements before he does. Pardon me. So yeah, it was just one of those situations where I think we were all stalling for time to do. Okay, and you know, he gave us that information. We saw the docks a little bit. You know, big dock energy. Theron, obviously, as a character, has worked on the docks and as a bounty hunter. So it's great to always make those jokes of like, oh, you're in your favorite terrain now. Like, what's this dock like? How does it compare? So we had a little bit of candor to do with that, which I always find funny. I obviously know Theron from the start of the game, so he and I, you know, play off that dock stuff. And I did ask him about, you know, how does it compare to the docks in Baldur's Gate? There was a point in time where I knew a lot about the lore of Baldur's Gate because I was playing number 1 and number 2 a fair bit, but I've kind of forgotten what they are. I'd have to go into lore and look at it and remember what the docks were. What have I got? No, I can't. Yeah, I'd have to go in and look at the lore and try and remember what those little bits are. I remember in Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate 1, there's like the Harbour Master area where the Flaming Fist is basically, and there's a huge part of where you have to take Jaren or something like that to the Harbour Master, etc., with no spoilers in Baldur's Gate 1. So I think being from Baldur's Gate is where I'm going with this, is that I'm going to have to kind of go back into the lore and start remembering a few of these things, because I have a feeling, and I'm not trying to plant the seed in the DM's mind, that some of this stuff might have to culminate in a trip to Baldur's Gate, basically. Which, that's D&D. Like, you can go anywhere, basically, in the Faerun setting. There was a possibility that we might have gone into outer space, as we had an astral elf in the game at one point. That's just kind of how D&D works. So we moved along to a shopping session with Gav, top-notch Gav, and that, what did we say? Gav the goated Gav, because Gav is a gnome, and we remember, like, we first met him, he had this weird-looking token. It was like, he looked like this crazy cyberpunk old man, cyberpunk version of Deckard Cain. And we were like, this dude is goated, like, he's a legend. And his name was Gav. And Gav's, you know, if you're a quintessential Australian, Gav's a great name. Gav, how are you, Gav? What's going on, Gav? So we came to his shop and we were met with Blanche, with Gav not being there. There was actually something we had to do for Heinrich. We had to come and talk to Gav about trying to link Heinrich back up with a source of goods, because the more we go back and see Heinrich, basically we're trying to find his mask because he's blind, he can't work. The more we do that, the more I feel personally as a player responsible for doing that to him. And I'm like, we need to get him a source of goods, a source of business. We need to get his business back up and running, not just because we get, you know, benefits from that by shopping in his shop and getting enchantments and that, but it's also, as a player, you think, I don't want that store to go to pot, basically, because of like what we did in the game. So yeah, we had to tell Gav about that, so try and get them linked up business wise so they can kind of trade goods or something like that, so we can get some more wares in Heinrich, basically replenish the shop timer. We had to replenish that, and Blanche hit us with the crazy Blanche Dubois from A Streetcar Named Desire, and hit us with some, we want the OnlyFiends in a book publication within the game. We've had this before very early on in the game where Volo was working on a new book. Essentially, we kind of made this deal with him to get a cut of this book. In the game, Volothamp is a drunk and annoying to us, which this guy. So very, very interesting, cagey kind of conversation with Blanche in that I think both Theron and Tricky were like, oh, we don't want like our likenesses. You can take like who we are, tell the story. Like it's a great story, the day Theron threw the sun at the fire giant. But don't use our likenesses, man. Like we're wanted. And like I think it showed a little character growth, a little player growth, personal growth in that rather than just say, hey, yeah, do it. How good will this be? This will be awesome. We kind of went, I think if you do this, like you are going to get some heat from this. If you use our likenesses, use who we are, tell the story in a way that kind of associates them with us as the wanted fugitive slash, would-be need to be assassinated group of D&D players, adventurers. You are gonna come into some trouble. So I think it showed some personal growth for us to just say, hey, like leave us out. Use the story. The story's interesting. Tell more stories about us, but leave us as people out until we vanquish this thing that's like hanging over us. So we went through that. We bought a few items. Blanche as a character was cool, very interesting. The Southern Belle. It's always fun to have like a Southern Belle character voice act that. That was a good little interaction. Just looking at the time, what have I been going? 45 minutes. So I got around 15 minutes to wrap this up. We had a chat. Oh, that was me in the halftime. We then came to this little market. I think we were still stalling for time. We came to this little market where Mongi wanted to get some food. And then we eventually met Corin. Corin showed up and we met him. He was, I'm just, having some food. And then we were eventually able to continue on by going back into Undermountain. We are in Undermountain. By going back into the dungeon section, I think we went down to level 4. I think we are on level 4 now. Which, as you can see here, it is a bit tough if this token, like, eventually I think of that token as, like, the camera. And if that thing has the same amount of dynamic lighting as us, it can kind of get left behind and, it just doesn't show exactly what really needs to be on screen. But we'll work on that over time. So eventually we got all the way down to this scenario where there was a charm spell that went off. And Tricky, of course, didn't roll very well. I think I rolled a 7 for my save, and I was out of Theron's Aura. Everyone likes to stay in Theron's Aura to get that extra save bonus. Pardon me. And yeah, he was charmed, and I thought about it while I was charmed, and hearing like voices in his head, a cacophony of kind of nice wailing. I think we put the DM on blast, and she had a little bit of stage fright. She didn't want to sing it, but she eventually sung it, and it made me think of like, I'll play it role-play wise as my mother. Like, essentially, it's my mother. Like, I can hear my mother singing. I need to go towards my mother. So after, Corin trying to restrain me, Theron trying to restrain me, it was great to see that Kareem as a new player, all of us have these issues when we're playing new at a table. You find your spots. You don't want to squash people. You don't want to just come in as like, I'm just going to talk over everyone and take over, because you might alienate the rest of the table. Like, everybody that playing D&D goes through that, trying to find their groove, trying to find where they fit into a party. And I love that he stepped straight up and just went, pa pa pa, stun, and it was just like beautiful, perfectly well played. And yeah, stunned, and it kind of got me out of that charmed effect. I think, yeah, it did. It actually got me out of the charmed effect. It was great that Corin tried. He tried to grapple me. It worked. He then tried to, football past me to Theron, who's obviously like huge doc energy, big doc energy, tried to grapple me. And then I ended up getting out of it And then, yeah, Karim popping up with the clutch stunned me and allowed us to sort of start off this fight in an advantageous position. Essentially, I think if Theron was mind controlled, he is a half elf, so I think he does have the immunity, or the not immunity, I think it's like the resistance to charmed effects. But I think if he ever got charmed, like, that made me think of, like, we're in serious trouble if he ever gets mind controlled. And he has the ability to do some serious damage. And I was thinking about it at the time, that I kind of also have a little bit of a propensity to do some serious damage. I think Corin as well, if he was ever mind controlled, has the propensity to do some serious damage. But in terms of the utility of Karim, I think he also has the potential to really mess up a fight if he ever gets mind controlled. And those things were just spinning in my mind at the time. I was just like, oh no, like, if I start firing on these people or like using my spells, you know, I don't necessarily have the greatest array of spells. Mirror Image is a defensive, whole person, invisibility, all kind of rogue utility stuff. It was going through my head the entire time, like, oh my god, if I am like having to fight these, like, my own party, like, this may not be good. But yeah, it made me think of, man, if Theron ever gets mind control, oh my god, it's Jova, man. So that led into a fight against some banshees, I believe it was, some form of banshees, and there was a hilarious moment where Corin, I think, tried to play a song. And what did he... I can't remember exactly what spell he tried to cast. But it was essentially a funny moment of dialogue, pardon me, where it's okay, like, it's okay, people have trouble with their spells sometimes. And yeah, that was a funny little moment. And we ended up dispatching these banshees pretty handily. It's always fun to get into combat and do these little combats here and there. But I feel personally as a player more connected to the bigger combats. Like, I love any kind of combat within the game. It's great to have like RP, movement, combat, RP, movement, combat, RP, movement, combat, and keep that rhythm and flow going. And in this dungeon scenario, I think that the style of the game as a product to stream to an audience is going to change drastically. I think there's going to be less roleplay, more movement, more moving around, more exploration. We'll, as a group, have to just kind of manage how this exploration part is going to play out. I just don't think that us moving tokens around is going to be a great product to watch, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I think it's a lot of work goes into the background of how she manages, how Nonverbal manages the game itself. So it's not easy to just go, right, stop, we're streaming, we're now going to do it in this other way that benefits, you know, the audience, right? Like, we still want her to transition as a DM in expanding her ability to DM without just saying, now you have to just do something completely out of pocket, out of your comfort zone. She's having some issues with the way we're doing music at the moment. And all the way through, like, it makes me as a player just go, oh, like, we're trying to move this as a product onto a streaming platform. And yeah, the more things we change, the more little tweaks we make, we definitely open it up to like little things going wrong. So we'll try and minimize that as we go. But yeah, the rest of this scenario essentially on this level, I believe probably the next 4 or 5 sessions will probably be underground and moving around a lot. And it may not be, you know, a fantastic product for us to see unless we kind of look at how we deliver that. But we'll do that over time. It's a learning process. I think the more we stream, the more we do, the more content we make, the better we'll get at it over time. So that makes sense as well. We fought these banshees. The poison cloud didn't reveal anything. And then we came down the bottom of this little tunnel section to a river. I believe there's a river there. And I don't know, I think I messed up what I was hearing. It's for us in Australia, when we play, I've said before, it's not my finest time. Like, I'm between now and, you know, around 2-3 o'clock is my time to shine. Like, this is where I'm popping. I've got ideas. I'm ready to go. I'm like thinking about things. When the game essentially is at 9:30, it's going to start at 9:30. By 11 o'clock, I'm like really struggling, and that's okay. That's on me. I've got to just keep myself working through it. But I thought the river was going to the left on screen, so I'm thinking to myself like, oh, it's coming from like upstream, and I completely messed this up. And Karim makes does a cool monk move, like gets to execute like one of those cool monk tropes where he runs skitters across the water, and there's a brick wall there, and he comes all the way back, and everyone goes, damn, what a baller. And I introduce a little gambling element in there with Corrin, because I think Corrin as a character is very jovial, very outwardly manifested, and I like that. And I think it's going to help Theron and I, you know, being the young, misguided Doomer basically characters, or a little bit Doomer characters. I think he's going to bring us out of his shell. And I threw 2 platinum down, said that he's going to go into the drink. 2 platinum says he goes into the drink. And Corrin's like, oh, yes, you're on. So I flipped him the platinum after he made it all the way back. And then from there, we are trying to find the source of this water. I think it was established that it is flowing from left to right on screen. Where it goes, we don't know. We don't have a map. So essentially, yeah, we're walking back into the dungeon to continue on and do more sort of walk and explore type things. Interesting. When as a player, right, you encounter what you are playing and the material that you're playing inside of and the material that you're playing with. For me as a player, I see the entire thing totally different to somebody who's like a DM who has to build all of this and make all of this happen. And to think like we're only on level 4 at the moment, and you just think like, holy moly, there's like 28 levels or something of this, like, and you just think like, wow, like there is so much exploring, so much just momentum you have to put into this as a DM, managing everything, as players, like knowing what you need to do as a dungeon crawl. And there's huge parts of this game that have been unexplored yet. I mean, we're at level 9. We've probably still got so much of this game to go. And mate, I'm here for it. It's going to be super fun. And actually, after a few, probably 5, 6, 7 sessions of doing these other things, the heist, roleplay, back on the surface, talking, shopping, I'm kind of ready to get back into like crawling through a dungeon, fighting little things, finding things, treasures, talking as a group. I feel like there might not be as much downtime as a group to talk things through, but I think there's definitely Karim's backstory to explore. Like, I think once somebody says, all right, tell us your story, Karim. Like, well, what's going on? Why are you here? We've also got we have Corrin information, and then we have Corrin's backstory that we can go into. And then we also have that dread of Rykett being kicked out of his order. Theron, there's assassins coming after Theron. So in Undermountain, at any corner, there could be, you know, a fight with assassins. And also Tricky is looking for his father. So at any point down here, his father could just pop up, and there's a whole roleplay avenue to go down in that sense. So make sure you like and subscribe. Oh, that was a beautiful segue. Make sure you give us a follow, give us a like on YouTube. You give us a rating and review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, all of those platforms, because this is where this will go in audio format. And yeah, make sure you tune in. Sunday nights, we are moving the game back an hour because those peeps in Europe, it's not daylight savings for them. 9 o'clock's obviously a little too early for them on a Sunday morning. It's tough. I get it. I totally understand. So we are moving it to 9 p.m. Australian time. No, 9:30 p.m. Australian time it's going to start. I do have... Hang on. Let me bring it up. I'll get it up so I can read it properly. Where is it? Here it is. It's going to start 10 a.m. UK time, 4 a.m. US time, 12 o'clock South African time, 9 o'clock Australian time. I totally stuffed that up. Add half an hour. That's essentially the time. On the hour is when we're all going to get together as a group, log in, get our funnies out, get ready for the start. But the session itself will start 10:30 UK time, 4:30 US time, AM, 12:30 South African time, PM. I've got AM there. I don't know why I've got AM. Oh, because it was 11 previously. And then 9:30 PM Australian time. So yeah, on Twitch, twitch.tv/OnlyFiends_DND. It's always a mouthful to say. And then yeah, also thank you for Tabletop for the audio. It's been playing through. Unfortunately, you're probably getting it at the right level on the output, but I was getting like the full input level and it was quite hard to talk. And I know if I messed with the settings, it would have messed with the output settings. So I'll work that out for next time. And yeah, it was great to do this little monologue. Hopefully going forward, we're going to try and do a little bit more content here and there, explore some of the backstories. We've got Timely, we've got the Mind Flayer. There's just hours and hours of content inside the game that we've played so far that we can re-explore, that we can work through and make little snippets of content out. So watch out for those on YouTube. Hopefully we'll start getting those going this year at some point in the next couple of months. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. This has been Tales from Trollskull Tavern with Tricky. My brain was just sifting through what I was going to say to sign off. I will say signing off. I'll have to work on that. I'll workshop that. Thank you very much for listening and for watching, and we'll see you on Sunday.